Okay, great. Welcome to the 15th Annual CWAG Candidate Forum. I'm Gary Beverly, President of the Citizens Water Advocacy Group. We are a local nonprofit corporation established in 2002 and run by volunteers and the board. Would the board members please stand up so we can introduce them? Russ Pilcher, Peter Krupnick, Mike Lane, Dirk String, and Ed Wolf, Leslie Hoy's in the back, Judy Dunlap, and Ellie Lawmark. So if you guys have questions about CWAG, approach these individuals after the meeting. At the back table, Leslie Hoy has a ton of literature, and you can sign up to become a member back there. Our vision is that all residents of the Upper Verde River watershed and the Prescott Active Management Area have a sustainable supply of clean water. Flows in springs and streams, especially the Verde River, are maintained, and the biodiversity of plant and animal communities is preserved. So we welcome your interest, and we need your support. So please join us. See Leslie at the back table. CWAG is nonpartisan, but all water issues are political. This forum's purpose is to insert water issues into the political and electoral dialogue and to educate, this is an important purpose, to educate voters and candidates about water issues. 5 candidates for the Prescott City Council will respond to a series of questions from CWAG and then questions from the audience. The questions are posted at our website, which is cwagaz.org. And these questions focus on local water issues. All the candidates receive the questions in advance. CWAG experts have met with some candidates upon their request to discuss the questions. The audience can submit written questions, which should be limited to local water concerns. Pass your question cards to the outside aisle, where Art Manberg and Fred Oswald will collect them, and then Peter Krupnick will review those questions and pass them to me. Because there isn't enough time to answer all your questions at the forum, CWAG will publish our answers to all your audience questions on our website. Our September program, second Saturday in September, I think it's the 14th, will also be devoted to answering your water questions. So we'll begin with a 1-minute introduction by each candidate. We have a timekeeper to keep us on schedule, and she is ruthless. Mr. Mayor, she is ruthless. After the candidate questions, we'll proceed to audience questions, and then finally each candidate will present a 1-minute closing statement. The program will end at noon, and then the candidates will be available for further conversation at the table in the back of the room. So, message for the audience. The restrooms are through the door in the Davis Hall and then to the right. And right now, take your cell phone out and put it on quiet. And I'm going to set a good example because mine was not on quiet. During the forum, please refrain from shouting, cheering, weeping, moaning, groaning, or applause during the forum. Save that for meeting with the candidates at the back. And then final request of the audience is vote. Really important. This is citizens' opportunity to direct the course of city government. Candidates. When you wish to speak, just hold up your water drop sign to be recognized. Please keep your comments to, well, we said 2 minutes, but we'd really appreciate shorter. I mean, if you can't say it in a few sentences, it indicates you don't really understand what you're saying. So shorter statements are more memorable and effective. And I know this is very difficult for everyone, especially political people. But let's try that, okay? Keep short statements. You're not required to take the full 2 minutes. You're welcome to comment on other candidate statements. So if somebody says something that you want to add to or disagree with, wave your water drop, and we encourage that kind of discussion. Before we meet the candidates, let us all recognize the considerable personal commitment required to run for office and serve on the City Council. Thanks to you all. So let's begin with candidate introductions. Mr. Sischka, would you begin, please?
Sure. Dr. Beverly and members of CWAG and the public. I'm Steve Sischka. I've been a councilman for 4 years. I'd like to be another 4 years. And so I'm running for re-election. I've been here for 39 years. I married a local girl. My father-in-law actually was a rancher out in Big Chino. And his name was John Olson. And he actually pumped some of the water we're going to be talking about today. And so I'm actually doing this for selfish reasons. I'm doing this because Prescott has been awfully, awfully, awfully good to me and my family. And I want to pay back. And I also want to say that it's an honor and a privilege to get up and talk water with you today.
Mr. Lamerson.
Thank you very much. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jim Lamerson. I've lived in Prescott for 40 years. My mother died here, my father died here, and my only daughter was born here. This is the only hometown I can claim. I was raised as a military child. I've traveled around. I've seen a lot of different things. I think it's an honor to serve the public. I choose to serve the public, and if the public would like to have me serve you again, I would be more than happy to do that. It's an honor and a privilege. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Cathey Rusing, and I'm running for Prescott City Council. I've lived in Arizona since 1965 and graduated from the University of Arizona with a Bachelor of Science in Nursing. My husband, Dr. Tom Rusing, and I moved back to Prescott in 1986 to start a family and open Prescott Surgical Clinic. And I'm running for Prescott City Council because we are at a critical crossroads regarding our future on crucial issues such as growth and development and water. And I'm a member of CWAG, and I know that our elected officials need to be educated on water issues because they make crucial decisions affecting our lives. They have a duty to you, the voters, the taxpayers, and the citizens to be informed on water issues. Water is a precious resource that must be conserved and used wisely, not only locally, but regionally. We've been in a drought cycle since 1995, or almost 25 years. The temperature is almost 22 degrees warmer. Thank you.
Mr. Mengarelli.
You said I have 10 minutes? What? One. Well, thank you so much, Gary and CWAG, for having us today. Welcome. Good morning, everyone. My name is Greg Mengarelli. I've lived here 24 years. I have a small family of 9 children, 4 of whom are adopted, and run a United Christian Youth Camp here. It's really a Christian summer camp here in town that whole time. I've been the mayor for 2 years, and it's been a real privilege and honor to serve you in that way and to lead the city, and I'm grateful for that opportunity. And I'd like to continue to do that another 2 years. There's a lot of things still in the hopper that we'd like to get done, and one of those very important things is our water policy, which we're still working on. So thanks again for having me.
Ms. Orr.
Thank you, and thank you to CWAG for hosting this event today. Hardly seems possible it was 4 years ago that we were here talking about water issues, so it's good to be back and to have our water drops hold up. I am Billie Orr. I'm running for re-election. I've served for 4 years. It's been an amazing 4 years. Very proud of some of the work that we've done together. Steve Sischka and I worked tirelessly on passing Prop 443 in order to take care of that unfunded liability that's holding the city back so much. I will tell you, I hope that my message today, that you will hear collaboration, leadership, conservation, all the things that CWAG stands for, but I really do want to talk a lot about collaboration and how the city might be able to take the lead on some issues. So thank you for having us. Happy to be here.
Okay, great. Let's start with the first question. Consultants Woodard and Dishlip have affirmed the city's previous water management strategies. Both reports allege that the city can grow for decades to exceed 80,000 population at build-out. Build-out means full development of all areas near or in the city limits. That growth can happen by relying on current legally available water supplies without the Big Chino pipeline. The AMA map, let's just get oriented a little bit. Here's Prescott down in here. Prescott Valley is over here, and Dewey is here. Del Rio Springs, the northern edge of the AMA, is here. And the map shows that Prescott Valley, Chino Valley, Dewey, Humboldt, and Yavapai County all share a common water supply, and they share management responsibility. Neither the consultants nor the city has mentioned the management goal of the active management area, which is safe yield by 2025. Safe yield is a long-term balance between groundwater withdrawals and storage. Long-term is the key here. It's the responsibility of the region, not ADWR. Now no plan exists, and now no discussions exist. This graph is data from ADWR's fourth management plan. So this is official data. So what this chart shows is, on the left axis is thousands of acre feet of water, and this is overdraft is down below the zero line. The blue bars are the annual overdrafts, which runs about 18,000 acre feet per year. That's a football field 3.5 miles deep. Each year is the amount of water that's being removed from the aquifer, not being restored. That's called the overdraft. This line is the cumulative overdraft. So each year that the overdraft is high, this cumulative overdraft increases. This line represents the amount of water removed from storage in our aquifer. So you can see that according to ADWR data, we're about 250,000 acre feet in the hole. As of 2012, that's the latest data we have from ADWR. It's way more than that now. So there is a problem here that we need to address. This shows the levels in a well in Chino Valley, and you can see where all Prescott's water comes from. That well is gone down 76 feet in the last 54 years. It declines about 2.5 feet per year. Water levels in our aquifer are declining. So question one, please comment on the city's responsibility to achieve safe yield in the Prescott active management area. Who would like to go first? Mr. Sischka.
With all due respect, Doctor, Prescott can't drag the AMA into safe yield. Prescott hasn't pumped any more water, 6,700 acre feet, than it did today, than it did in 2000. So we've grown by 2% a year. We have reduced our water consumption by 2% a year. I feel that Prescott is doing an excellent job as far as what its responsibility is to the AMA.
Ms. Orr?
Thank you. I agree with Councilman Sischka. However, I would say, again, I hope my message is one of collaboration. I believe that we should, and I believe our council would be all for working together with the county, all the other cities, Chino Valley, Dewey Humboldt. You know, we do this with SIMPO. SIMPO is about transportation and regional transportation. I serve on that committee, and I will tell you, we work every month regionally to tackle the issues about transportation. So is that a model that we could use to talk about water? It certainly could be. And I believe that the mayor, our council, would be willing to sit down and talk about what we might be able to do in the AMA, just to share ideas. as Councilman Sischka said, we cannot drag everybody along. But you know who's not at the table right now, we really need at the table, and that's the county because of the unmetered wells, the septic systems. There's really no regulation out there at all as far as water quality for wells. And I believe that there are things that we can get done in the AMA, but it's going to take everybody willing to sit down together.
Ms. Rue Singh.
Please allow me to quote our general plan dated 2015. Currently, there is no plan to achieve safe yield within the AMA. Therefore, on the basis of ADWR projections, the current rate of net drawdown is not sustainable for the long term. So with that in mind, first, we need to admit that we do have a problem. We need to recognize there is a problem, say, yes, we have a problem, and then we can move on to the next step, which is solving that problem. Let's find solutions to increase recharge, decrease the overdraft, and work towards safe yield. And we need to join together with the Central Highlands and cooperate, plan, and conserve. Our goal is safe yield and preservation of the flow of the Verde River. It is a regional issue. The aquifer does not stop at our wells at Chino. Thank you.
Mr. Lamerson, please.
Yeah. We, that being the city of Prescott, are doing what is within our jurisdictional ability to do. Should there be a different setup to handle some of this issue? Yeah, but you got to include the state. Until the state of Arizona stops issuing exempt wells that are unregulated and unmanaged in any shape, manner, or form, it's very difficult. Like in the city, for example, if you live within a certain distance to the sewer lines and the water lines, et cetera, you can still get an exempt well if it costs more for you to hook up. Well, that's not something that's a good thing, because an exempt well, effectively, you can pump, if you wanted to, up to 57 acre-feet a year, where it's out of our control. So I think the big elephant in the room isn't the city of Prescott, it's not the town of Prescott Valley, and it isn't Yavapai County, it's the state of Arizona. They've denied their culpability for what's going on throughout the water.
Mr. Mengarelli.
Thank you. Well, I'm very proud of the city of Prescott and what we're doing to make sure that we get to safe yield. We are the leader in the Prescott AMA in making sure that we have a sustainable water source. So I always talk about all the great things that we do with recharge and conservation to ensure that we have a sustainable water source. When I was looking at the one well that you were citing here, Gary, I couldn't get the 2.5 feet per year number to work. What I would just say on that is I would take a broader approach. There is a problem, so I'm with you. There is an issue with the water table decreasing year over year. I don't think it's quite to the extent that you have it listed here. There's 55 wells that are monitored in the Little Chino Aquifer. 45 of those wells show a decline of 1.4 feet per year, and 10 show on average a half-foot per year increase. So I think, again, there is a problem. I'm not arguing that. I just don't know that it's quite to the extent of 2.5 feet per year. I think if you're going to use data, I would try to use a broad spectrum of those 55 monitored wells that the ADWR monitors, just to get a little better handle on the data. But again, with the whole AMA, Cathey mentioned Central Highlands. Maybe we should call it the Central Highlands AMA, because with Prescott's name on it, everybody kind of points to us first, yet we're doing, I think, the best job.
Good idea.
So I would say, yes, we want to work with others, but it requires them wanting to work with us. But once we get our water policy finished up, which is going to happen here real soon, I think we're in a great position to then reach out, and I'm happy to reach out to these other cities and towns and the county to work towards safe yield. I think it's a great idea.
Great. Ms. Rue Singh?
As Gary pointed out, it is not ADWR's responsibility to reach safe yield. It is the responsibility of all the communities in the Central Highlands, Prescott, Prescott Valley, Chino, Yavapai County, Dewey, Humboldt. We all have straws in the same aquifer. Once we admit that we have a problem, we can work on solving it. Thank you.
Mr. Sischka.
Thank you, Dr. Beverly. You know, I think that the big 5,000-pound gorilla in the room is the Big Chino Water Ranch. And ADWR has said we can't achieve safe yield by 2025 unless we import water. I'm not in favor of importing water. I think that that's robbing Peter to pay Paul. But you know, all the talk of everything else, ADWR breaks it down to we don't get the Big Chino Water Ranch to import water into the AMA, we don't get safe yield.
I think you have to look at ADWR's assumptions when they made that statement, and they didn't include water conservation anywhere near the scale that's currently being done in the city of Prescott. Mm-hmm. Nor did they include additional conservation measures that can be done in the future. So maybe ADWR doesn't always speak the truth, but that's a good point. Mr. Lamerson.
Thank you. Arizona Department of Water Resources. That's the acronym. That's who they are. It's a statewide issue. It's not just an AMA issue. It's a state that governs what happens within the AMA. It's the state that said that we need to reach safe yield by such and such a time. Well, all we can do as a municipality is the best that we can do with regards to putting as much water back in artificially and naturally as we take out. And Prescott has done our job. Now, can we work with other people as a leader and demonstrate how they can better do their job? If they want to talk. But like the mayor said, you have to be able to have people that want to enter into an agreement to move forward. I think the state has been less than diligent in how it's handled its responsibility to the water in the state of Arizona.
And we really agree with that last statement. Ms. Rue Singh.
Allow me to read again from our general plan, and I quote, "Importation could balance the overdraft and assist in meeting the goal of safe yield. However, even with importation, a degree of uncertainty exists. The current drought and its potential duration is relevant in ongoing water resources management."
Ms. Orr.
Thank you, Gary. Again, I hope we leave today with some solutions, some ideas going forward. And I guess I'm just going to put it out there. Let's talk more about collaboration within the cities, with the county. We can take the lead on that, and I believe we should do that. And again, SIMPO, we do this with transportation every month. Let's think about what we might be able to do as a community, all of our communities coming together. Again, the county has to be at the table. Thank you.
Okay, we need to move to the next question. Got such an interesting discussion there, I kind of ran over time a little bit. But so here's one. What's your plan for balancing our growing population, increased housing density, and annexation requests with the ever-increasing aquifer overdraft? What would be your message to the citizens of Prescott concerning their role in implementing this plan? Mrs. Orr?
Thank you, Gary. Well, I think it's important that we really be accurate about the data. And that's the one thing I'm very pleased about with the water policy that we're looking at. We're actually using real data. The city of Prescott, since 1990, has grown 2% a year. That ends up being about 55%. The city of Prescott Valley has grown 500%. The city of Chino, 300%. So I believe that the city is growing at a responsible rate. However, we cannot put a fence around our city, nor can we put it around the AMA. People are going to move in. So I think the good news is that we are conserving water, and thank you, CWAG, because you have been the leaders of education about conservation, and the city's done a good job with that. I believe the tiered water rate structure that we have in the city has certainly done a huge, and I believe you point to this, Dr. Beverly, in your report.
That'll be one of the next slides.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's been a big plus for us on the water conservation. So let's use real data and let's be very truthful about what's going on with regard to population and also water usage. Thank you.
Next, who would like to go next? Mr. Sischka.
Thank you. Well, Prop 400 has done a really good job as far as balancing our growing population. And I know that you had a lot to do with that. Increased housing density. I'll tell you what, I've been at meet and greets out in Walden Farms, out in Granite Dells Estates. Those are all new homes. It's all dense. I'll tell you what, I didn't see much landscaping at all. I saw a lot of rocks. I saw a few plants. And I don't think we'll see that in those kind of future developments. I don't think we'll see lawns. We won't see swimming pools. We're not going to see huge lots. When we came in 1980, we bought a 1/5 of an acre lot in Prescott. So 1/5 of an acre lots are not unusual. I think that we need to, I'm not sure if Prescott has contributed to the ever-increasing aquifer overdraft. We haven't pumped any more than we did in 2000. And citizens of Prescott, I'd say get on board and start to save water. Cathey and I use about 1/10 of an acre foot a year. And I don't see why anybody can't do that.
Next, Ms. Rue Singh.
The Central Highlands are increasing in population. We can't stop people from moving here. We are growing, but I believe we should grow reasonably and sustainably. We can't reduce the population, but we can reduce our water use per capita through water conservation and water recycling. Reduce and reuse. Conservation is essential, and it is the cheapest and quickest way to implement conservation, and it's not constrained by state law. But we must remember we can conserve only so much before it levels out. And it's true, the people of Prescott, you have been doing a fabulous job being water-wise. And we need to keep up the good work and keep improving, but we must remember it is a regional issue. Thank you.
Mr. Mengarelli, go ahead.
Thank you, Gary. So a couple numbers real quick. We used 6,700 acre feet last year, 6,700 acre feet. In 2007, we used about 8,300 acre feet of water. So we were much smaller back in 07, yet we used 8,300 acre feet. So today we're using 1,600 acre feet less per year than we were using all the way back in 07, and we know we've grown about 2% per year. Billie had a good stat there, 55% growth since 1990 compared to some of our neighbors, which contributes to traffic as well when they're coming into town. So I think we're doing a great job of seeing that we're growing at a very marginal rate, just 2% or less, yet we're using less water. We see that it's decoupled. Population growth and water usage are totally decoupled. As we grow 2%, our water usage goes down about 2%. So I think we keep doing some of the things that we're doing. We have done some studies which really inform us to the best places to focus our conservation efforts, and that would really be particularly with sewer and septic systems. Septic systems really are a problem for us. They contaminate the aquifer possibly, but more importantly, we want that water from the septic into our recharge facility. So we're looking at ways that we can really get those septic systems onto our sewer system.
And last but certainly not least, Mr. Lamerson. Following the rules, that's good.
Hey, yeah, Prescott's done a pretty good job on a lot of things. I would like to continue the growth rate that we have, 1.5% to 3% a year. Managing our growth is not a bad thing, it's a good thing. I agree with a lot of the comments that have been said up here that while we have grown in population, we've reduced our water consumption. That's true. I've got the same statistics here that show exactly what Greg was talking about and what Steve was talking about and what Cathey was talking about. Prescott is doing a great job. The state of Arizona has not done its job. I keep going back to that because the water management for the state water resources are not in the control of the city of Prescott or Yavapai County. It's at the state level. We have state senators here. We have state representatives here. We had the Speaker of the House here. We had the President of the Senate here. Guys, we have an opportunity to lobby the right people to do the right job.
CWAG has been working on the state to make some reforms in water law, and we've been just squashed, ignored. We would appreciate working with the city in that effort. So let's put that on a list of things we can work together on. We need the help. Quick, please, and then I'm back on schedule.
And Gary, I want to say absolutely, we can help with that. And
Yeah.
we can help lead that. And so let's do it.
Okay. So the next question is deals with conservation in the AMA. And so here's a complicated graph I have to explain just for a second. So on the left side here is the monthly water bill, and on the x-axis here is the monthly usage in gallons. So 35 gallons a day per person for 2 people is 2,100 gallons a month. This is easily achievable, and you can see that water rates are very cheap down at this low level. As you use more water, you pay more. The amount of increased charge per water depends a lot on what city you live in, and that's what this chart shows. Shows that Prescott Valley has a pretty flat rate scheme, that you can use a lot more water and not pay much more for it. Sedona also has a fairly flat rate scheme. The town of Chino Valley gets a little steeper. Flagstaff is steeper yet, and Prescott has the steepest increasing block rate structure in the state, and you should be proud of that. That's very good, and it's very helpful. That was instituted in 2006, and it plays a large role in your good numbers now. That, of course, is only one piece of a water conservation program. So you can see the ratio between the high and low rates, and Prescott is 4.5, Prescott Valley is 1.56, so this is very, very low. So, given that information and given the compliment that you guys have got a nice rate structure, the question is, how will you as the city of Prescott, how will the city of Prescott and you as a council member encourage and assist other AMA communities and Yavapai County to conserve water and reduce the overdraft? In other words, the theme that we keep coming back to here is a larger regional responsibility. It's not legal responsibility. It is maybe a moral responsibility. Mr. Sischka.
Thank you. I think we do have a moral responsibility. The problem is that the surrounding communities have different ideas about growth and water. Prescott Valley feels like, I was talking to the vice mayor of Prescott Valley the other day, and she says, well, we've got 2.5 times the water underneath Prescott Valley that you have access to out in the Little Chino. So what does that say about, okay, we're going to grow like crazy, and we're also going to make sure that all those people get water? I think that out in the county, if you look at the county, got all the exempt wells, it may cost something to put in a well, but after that, the water's free. And legally, ADWR can't do anything about that. I'd love to bring along our fellow communities, but their philosophies are different, and we have to understand that. And somehow we have to work on a different basis with them, on a moral basis maybe, to say, let's get those prices for water up so that people don't use as much.
Okay, great. Who would like to go next? Ms. Rue Singh.
Safe yield is measured and defined by the region, not by individual cities. The Groundwater Management Act of 1980 puts the responsibility of reducing the overdraft onto the cities in the AMA. We have shared responsibility to reach safe yield and protect the Verde River. The Little Chino Aquifer is shared and the level is dropping. Everyone realizes that water is precious, and water conservation does not mean a reduction in the quality of life. And Prescott is setting a good example. However, our message to the region should be, we are spearheading a sustainable conservation policy. Here's why it's important that we all work together. Please join us. We need to form a working group of experts, representatives from the communities, and the stakeholders. Thank you.
Ms. Orr.
Thank you. Yes, I believe the tiered water system rates that we have made dramatic impact on conservation for our city. The other things are the technology that's out there now. We just installed in the city the low flush toilets. I bought a new washing machine last year. My old one used about an acre-foot every load. My new one uses about half a cup. It's amazing. And so those are things that we can do, and that we can provide rebates. And with our new water policy, we're looking at extending the rebates. Certainly shower heads, all of those things matter because it all adds up. And so the more that we can promote those, I think the better.
Next.
Councilman, go ahead.
Thank you. It has to be done from a regional perspective. There has to be regional cooperation. Prescott cannot be the only entity in the region that wants to cooperate. There are other ways that you negotiate. We're the only assured water provider in the AMA. We don't have to provide water outside of the AMA. We don't have to provide it to anybody that's not in the city limits of Prescott either. There's other things that we do as a regional entity. You know, when you get into negotiating roads, you get into negotiating airports, you get into negotiating all kinds of things, fire safety, public safety, and all kinds of things, you work on a regional basis. In this particular situation, the state is the big elephant in the room. The state is the one that controls the water. The state needs to be at the table of whatever we do on a regional basis. The state has to have a place at that table. That's my opinion.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. Well, number one, it looks like leadership on that graph. We keep saying that, and thanks for the compliment. I would say with charges, too, one of the things we want to do is be very intelligent. Again, with septic systems, we're going to penalize people, or I should say give more incentive to put in the low flush toilet if you have a septic system, because we don't get that recharge. Furthermore, I think the outdoor landscaping, that's really where we lose that water, as we all know. And so, again, we want to incentivize folks to, do xeriscape or whatever out there. And we have a very strict landscape code anyway. Prescott's used to leading. So let me give you a couple examples. We had a sober living problem. We're all very aware of it. Had a couple hundred or more of those homes. Noel Campbell and others did a tremendous job stepping up with the city and Harry Oberg at the time to take care of that problem. And then guess what? The state adopted our sober living code. The same was true really with the hands-free with our phones when we're driving, right? Several municipalities, including Prescott, stepped up. We passed our own ordinance, and then the state followed. And I think that's probably going to be the case here again. Prescott does need to lead, and we have broad shoulders, and we've proven that we're a great leader and will continue to be a great leader even in the space of water. And I'll make a campaign promise right here. This is recorded, right? For the record.
That's right.
All right. I'll make a campaign promise. And that is that I will endeavor to invite the mayors in the county, and I have a good relationship with all those folks. I will invite the mayors in county to a water summit before the end of the year. Now, I'm not guaranteeing the result, but I'm extending the invitation.
Thank you. And that's a very important step. And we do have to admit that we do have a problem, and then we can work together to find solutions. And I'd also like to make a comment to Steve. He mentioned he was out in some of the new developments, and it was all dirt and rock. And I would like to encourage that the city use more, it's called disturbable area envelopes. That's how our older neighborhoods and how my neighborhood is built, where you just leave as much native vegetation and topsoil as possible on the lot, and then you just clear the footprint for the home and the driveway and some patios. That way, you don't use your drinking water to water artificial plant or non-native plants that have been transplanted, and the topsoil will absorb the water, the rainwater, instead of allowing it to run off, which is what happens when large expanses of dirt have been scraped and there's new subdivisions. Thank you.
Mr. Lamerson.
Thank you. I'll take another bite at this apple. I would like to humbly remind the mayor, 2-3 years ago, the state made legislation which created the opportunity for the city to set up a standard of care to handle drug rehab and alcohol rehab and stuff like that. We have a similar situation on water management. The state has to be at the table. And I just keep going back to that because it's not in our control to do it. All we can keep doing is beating this apple over the heads of the people we elect and we have contact with.
So ADWR does have a groundwater users advisory council that has representatives from all the major groundwater users, that is the cities. Representatives from the cities are appointed by the governor. That board meets here quarterly. And personally, I would think that you could regard that board as being ineffective. And so there is actually, as you're talking about the problems of the state, Jim, there is an avenue that we could begin to explore that. Mr. Sischka.
Thank you, Dr. Beverly. I'm a get-it-done kind of guy. There's been several regional groups that have dealt with water over the past few years. I don't see anything happening. I don't see anything getting done. We need to commit that if we're going to do this, something gets done. I'm tired of the inaction, tired of sitting there listening to reports and everybody nodding yeah, and then everybody leaving and things staying the way they are. If we're going to do something, let's get it done.
So if it wasn't against the rules to applaud, I would. But so this is excellent discussion. Is there any other comment on that before we move to the next question? Okay, let's move along. So conservation and development in Prescott. Flagstaff and Santa Fe have adopted long-range sustainability plans that include water policies. Long range is the key word here. And so this is the front page of Flagstaff's plan and of Santa Fe's plan. Albuquerque developed a water conservation plan, forward-looking. This was developed with community participation, and this is a really important part in CWAG's view. It has annual performance milestones, and it's updated. So this plan is now running up through 2038. So Prescott has no similar plans. Question: should Prescott have a long-range conservation plan with annual milestones? If so, what incentives or ordinances would you propose? Who wants to go first? These are not easy questions. Have you folks noticed? Go ahead, Ms. Rue Singh.
Thank you. Absolutely. If other communities are doing it successfully, then why reinvent the wheel? An annual assessment is important to see if the plan is working. And if not, then changes can be implemented. Measurable goals are important. First of all, any sustainability plan should be included in our general plan, and it should be backed up with the plan should be backed up with codes and ordinances, which is important. And by the way, a small change that I would like to see is on our water bill, which already has a bar chart, but I think the daily water use average for the month should be featured prominently in each bill. And also, every year, the city should have an insert in our water bill with an annual report on our water conservation progress, and it should also be published online and also in the newspaper in order to engage the public. Thank you.
Next, Mr. Sischka.
I would agree with Ms. Rue Singh as far as what she said about the things about our water bill. I've wondered why we don't go deeper into how much people are using all the time and pointing out to them how much totally you're using and then how much we're getting back. Yeah, it's on there, but you have to look for it. And so, right now we're getting back around 60% of the water for recharge. And I would totally agree with that. I think that this needs to be a regional situation. ADWR and the fourth management plan gives us goals, but that doesn't do much if the region doesn't come along. So I think that in this meeting in which we're going to get a whole lot done, I think that annual milestones would be awesome.
Next comment, Mrs. Orr.
Well, I will tell you, I think that we have so much fresh data about water usage, and what we've been doing, and it's good data, and it's actual data. I remember, I think it was like 3 years ago, we talked about reducing, because we were setting aside 0.35 acre feet of water for each house in the city of Prescott, and we were only using 0.17. So we reduced it down to 0.25. So why not use the exact? We know exactly how much water every business is using, every house is using. So let's get that data out there and let's use it. And I think that's important to deal with real-time data, and we have it. So I believe that we can do that. And we do address, it may not be in an official plan, but we certainly do address how much water the city is using. And there is a plan. It goes into to 2020. But so often plans get, like Steve's saying, they get stuck on a shelf and they gather dust. So I like the idea of milestones, looking at it continuously.
Mr. Lamerson.
Thank you. Thank you, Billy, for acknowledging we do have a plan. If we hadn't had a plan, we wouldn't be where we are today. We wouldn't be a city that's grown in using less water than what we did 30 years ago. I mean, at the end of the day, go back and look at history, what we were using in the 90s. Right. Go back and look at what we were using in the early 2000s and look at what we're using today. A lot of that came out of conservation. A lot of it came out of rate structure. That was part of conservation. A lot of it came out of technology, low flush, low this, low that. But at the end of the day, it came out of incentives. We do have a plan, and the plan has been a good plan. And I'm proud of the city of Prescott for what we've done in our water conservation.
Go ahead.
We are groundwater mining, and we are not in safe yield. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. So ADWR allows us to pump about 16,500 acre feet a year. 16,500. We use, recent data is 6,700 acre feet annually. So we have a lot of headroom. We have about 10,000 acre feet sitting there that we're not using, that we're allowed to pump. Herb Dishlip did a study recently, and I think many of you have seen this, where he projected out the total amount of land mass that's ever available for us to possibly annex, and then using land development code and existing zoning, kind of his worst case scenario for us, using existing conservation measures that exist today, we would use less than 13,000 acre feet in that scenario. Now, this is not like a 5 or 10 year outcome. This is generations beyond us right now, that we would maybe get to 80 or 90,000 people. Who knows when that might happen. But it was good to see that in his projection, we have enough water today to serve Prescott well into the future. Now, I know some are thinking, okay, Greg, that's paper water. What about wet water? And I get that with the aquifer. I understand that. But the bottom line is we have a pretty good roadmap, and it's because of what has already taken place. Let's not forget Willow and Watson Lakes that Jim Lamerson and others purchased years ago with taxpayer dollars. That's really a large part of our recharge effort, which is a great part of our plan. So we look at our water annually. We look at that portfolio. We see what's going on. And so I think we do have good measures in place, and we do look at this annually.
Okay, next question is, what should the role of citizens be in developing water policy? Mr. Sischka.
I hate to be first all the time, but sometimes the kid in the back of class who's going like, ooh, 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 like this, that's the way I feel today. You know, years ago, back in 2005, CWAG really was the sponsoring group for Prop 400. And Prop 400 was a citizen participation proposition so that we wouldn't grow without citizen input. And I think that Prop 400 needs to be expanded to some fellow communities and also to possibly somehow with the county. I'm not sure how that would happen. I mean, you guys are going to have to work awful hard to get that done in some of our fellow communities. But I think it can be done. So go to work.
Thanks for the homework assignment. Next, Ms. Rusing.
Public participation and input is essential for cooperation, and local experts such as CWAG should be included. If you want people to change their behavior, i.e. wasting water, then they must understand the rationale behind it. Everyone must be involved. It is important to unify the community to achieve a common goal. The people of Prescott have done a wonderful job reducing their per capita water usage. And I think it proves that our citizens are motivated to reach safe yield, reduce the overdraft, and to protect the Verde River through conservation.
Ms. Orr.
Thank you, Gary. This year we started the Citizens Academy in the city of Prescott. We're beginning our 4th class coming next week, actually. And then in that academy, it's an 8-week course, and we address all the areas of the city, and people leave there saying, wow, I learned so much about the city of Prescott. Lived here 40 years, did know all of this. And water is a part of that academy. And we also have an academy for police. We have a fire academy. And we also have ambassadors in our city now that they welcome people at the city. So we invite every effort we can for citizens to get involved. Call me. My door's open. I know the same is with the mayor. I don't think I've ever turned down a meeting with anybody. So we want your involvement, and let us know how we can participate.
Okay. Mr. Lamerson.
Thank you, Gary. You know how when we first started you said shorter's better? You're doing it right now. You're redressing government, and that's the best that any citizens group can do.
I love the short answer. Mr. Mengarelli.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Orr that we welcome public comment in our meetings. We welcome email, phone call, come on in. We'd love to hear from the public. And I would say you should extend what you're doing here to all the municipalities to make sure that everybody is held accountable.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. The city has penciled in 300 acre-feet per year for the Arizona Eco Development proposed annexation in the Dells. That 300 is the last information that we have, so I don't know what the current is, but that's the best information we have. The market value of that water at $30,000 an acre foot is $9 million. How do you justify to voters this subsidy for private developers, especially in the light of our growing overdraft? Ms. Orr?
I beat you, Steve. I think this is an interesting question because right now we are This project has not yet gone to planning and zoning. We've been hoping it's going to happen every month, but hopefully it will be soon. I think we've all been on record saying, as it is now, we would vote no for the plan. However, I believe, honestly, that we are going to get a really majestic opportunity of great open space in the Dells area from this negotiation. So the $9 million, that comes to about, I've hesitated putting an acreage on this, but I think if we get the Point of Rocks, we get No Name Creek, we get the riparian area, I believe we're probably looking at $425, $450. You multiply that out, $9 million, that's about $20,000 an acre. I looked at, and I have an article and we have the magazines in the back on Prescott Living. Constellation Trail, the city paid $50,000 an acre for the Constellation Trail. For the Granite Gardens, $83,000 an acre. So I think not only will we get the recharge from the connectivity, so we'll get the water back, but also if we can negotiate great land and wonderful open space, which we will, or it won't happen. And so for me, I think it's a great opportunity for our city.
So you're saying that it's not really a subsidy, it's more like an exchange?
It is a negotiation. That's exactly right.
Okay.
It's land for water.
Okay.
And water for water, because we're going to get that water back in our recharge. So it is absolutely a negotiation, and we're going to get a good deal for the city of Prescott.
Okay. Ms. Rue Singh? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Mr. Sischka was next.
You know, water is a capital asset, and so it should be a negotiating point. But if you think that on another, taking another tact, if you think that growth is not paying for growth through impact fees, through all sorts of fees, growth pays for capital growth. And so the water is not free. They pay for the water after they get it, and they also pay for the infrastructure before they get it. And I'm talking about new growth.
Ms. Rue Singh.
With all annexations, a cost-benefit analysis is done. In return for city services such as water, the developer must preserve a minimum of 25% of the property as open space, which has value to the taxpayers. People come from all over to hike, bike, ride horses, and enjoy the Dells. Ecotourism brings in dollars to the economy. To preserve the heart of the Dells, which is the most iconic and environmentally sensitive part of the Dells, is asking that the 500 acres be preserved, which is 25%. It is an exchange. If that 500 acres were sold pre-annexation as raw land, it would be valued at approximately $20,000 an acre or $10 million. But can you put a price tag on saving the heart of the Dells forever? I don't think so. Hopefully, there will be a meeting of the minds and the Dells can be saved. Thank you.
Okay, let's finish the initial responses, then I'll come back to you. Please.
It's Jim.
I was trying to be more respectful,
right,
Mr.
thanks.
Lamerson.
It's okay. But at the end of the day, this is an exchange. It's a trade. As a councilman, I would rather not see that land developed in the county by county standards without the influence of the city of Prescott, the citizens of Prescott. I want the land in the city. That's the bottom line. In order for us to have influence on it, it's got to be in the city. Otherwise, we don't. And we're negotiating with the people that own that land, and we're trying to get the best deal for the city that we can get in exchange for the city's water. Like Sischka here said, water's a commodity. We don't have to give it to them. Their water that they want to exchange hasn't got the quality that our water does, so we've got to devalue their water, and we're working on stuff. You got to give us the opportunity to put the T's with the crosses and the dots over the I's and stuff like this, and it hasn't been done yet. It's just not ready to go to P&Z, and we're working on it.
Okay, Mr. Mengarelli.
Yeah, thank you. So this is a fun one. I think on your existing council, I guarantee you there's no question that we all value the Dells. That's a foregone conclusion. Of course, we love the Dells. We want to preserve the Dells. We want to, preserve No Name Creek and some of those areas around there. So that's a foregone conclusion. I think something that gets lost in this conversation is private versus public open space. So Ms. Rue Singh mentioned the 25% that has to be open space, but that's what I call private open space, or you could call it common space inside of a development. So with the Dells, with a private landowner, he could identify rocks and say, my 25% is Point of Rocks or whatever, and then fence it off as private open space, and we wouldn't get to use it, the public. What's happening here and what I'm seeing from this developer is he's willing to deed this land to the public, to the city. That's a big deal. So he will give us the Point of Rocks and much more than that. Furthermore, there's a lot of land up by the airport that's in the negotiation, which is very, very important. You're probably going to see something north of 1,000 acres from this developer that they will give deeded to the city. Very different than private open space. So don't get lost and forget public versus private open space. Very different and very important. Anytime you negotiate, and that's what this is, and we're still in the middle of it, we don't know where we're at. Anytime you negotiate, I've never got a deal done where I took one hard, solid position and never moved. So to say that we have to get 500 acres is not the best way to negotiate. Do we want to get 500? Yes. We're going to try to get as much as we can, but to hold fast in one position at 500 acres and not move is not the way to get a deal done.
Ms. Orr?
Yeah, and we'll build on what the mayor is saying here, because we are talking about public open space. And if we are able to make No Name Creek, Point of Rocks, the riparian area, public open space around that trail that we already own, that is huge. And what a great opportunity for our city. And at $20,000 an acre, that's a good deal. I see a park and a Granite Dells Preserve and an interpretive center. And that can all happen. But we have to stay the course on negotiating. And again, like the mayor said, you go hard and fast with something, that would shut down negotiation tomorrow. And we're not willing to shut down negotiation. We need to keep working on this and get a great deal for the city of Prescott with public open space.
Go ahead, Mr. Sischka.
Thank you. I'd like to give you folks a little dose of reality. I don't know if you've all heard of Telluride, but outside of Telluride, coming into town on the right, there's 550 acres of marshland, bog. And the developer who owned it wanted to put a hospital on it, and Telluride said, we don't want a hospital there, build it somewhere else. And so Telluride took that 550 acres on eminent domain. And the developer took him to court. Now this is marshland, bogland. Developer took him to court. The judge said, sure, Telluride, you can have the land, but you're going to have to pay $50 million for it. That's $87,000 an acre. So if you think we're going to get this for $20,000 an acre, I think we're sorely mistaken.
Go ahead.
I'm going to just make a few comments about Telluride. You're talking about the meadow as you're coming into town, and if I remember, the developer was going to put a big development on it. It was going to be residential houses, condos, and it wasn't a hospital. And he ended up, the people raised the money and bought him out at the peak of the market just before the crash, and so he got bought out and did very well. And the people have their meadow, which they enjoy pretty much every day of the year. I've been up there, and it's beautiful up there with cross-country skiing. So thank you. I think it was a win-win situation for everybody.
Okay.
I wish we had all of the actors and actresses and singers and stuff like that that contribute millions of dollars to that effort. I wish we had those here in Prescott.
Okay, that's the last word on this question. Let's go on to the next. So this is the Verde River and the Big Chino water pipeline. So let's just kind of get oriented a bit here first. This is a Google Earth image taken from like 35 miles up. So you see here's Prescott down here. This little green square is Prescott Valley, and this is Dewey Humboldt. So Highway 69 cruises through there, and you know how far that feels, so you can kind of intuit the scale of this map. It's big indeed. Chino Valley is in here underneath. I cleverly put it, the black box on top of it. So the purple outline is the outlines of the Big Chino Aquifer, which you note extends into Williamson Valley and up towards Seligman. Paulden is here. This blue splash dot thing is Verde Springs, which is the beginning of perennial flow in the Verde River, which flows 194 miles down to meet the Salt River just east of Scottsdale. This is Perkinsville Bridge. This 25-mile stretch, Verde Springs is the only source of water for that first 25 miles, which is some of the finest riparian and wildlife habitat remaining in the state of Arizona. The water from Verde Springs comes from the Big Chino Aquifer, over 80% according to the USGS. So anything that reduces groundwater here reduces the flow of the springs and reduces the base flow of the first 25 miles. So in a nutshell, this is the problem that I know we're all working on. So hydrologists agree that groundwater pumping is an existential threat to the Verde River. There's 4 areas of groundwater pumping that cause a problem here. One is expanded agricultural irrigation. Those would be the red dots. Second would be water exports, and this the Big Chino Water Ranch would potentially be about half of that total water export potential. Population growth throughout the green area will occur in the Big Chino Valley in future years. And the pump storage facility is going to get its water here, but the storage facility is actually up there off the map. So taken together, unmitigated groundwater pumping will eliminate the year-round flow of the Upper Verde. This is a serious problem. 25 miles is threatened. The potential groundwater pumping there is about 5 times the current river flow. This is a serious problem. The river is a resource that we all share and value. And every city, every citizen has a responsibility and an opportunity to protect it. So the question then is, how should the city of Prescott and our regional partners address these 4 threats to the river? This is not an easy question. I'm hoping you can give us some answers. Ms. Rue Singh.
Thank you. You're right. This is not an easy question. And of course, I don't have all the answers, and I still have a lot to learn. But here are some options. For expanded irrigation, the farmland could be bought and the water rights retired, and the land could be placed in a conservation easement. For population growth, we are going to continue to grow. Arizona and Prescott is a desirable place to live. That's why regional cooperation, planning, and conservation is crucial. If we conserve water, not just in Prescott, but in the AMA as a whole, we can decrease the effects of population growth. And once again, Prescott is a good example. Water exports from the Big Chino. Pumping the Big Chino will be done under the watchful eye of SRP in order to protect the Verde River. Prescott and Prescott Valley share the water rights and are limited to 8,000 acre-feet per year total. As far as the ITC pump storage, At first, I thought it sounded like a bad idea, pumping groundwater for this project in Arizona. But however, from a water use stance, the reservoirs will only have to be filled once for a total of 420 acre-feet, and then about 1,000 acre-feet a year will replace the evaporation lost. And there might be a chance of some jobs and revenue being created. But as far as the pipeline, it will be pumping all the time. But once again, both the pipeline and the pump storage will put further pressure on the Verde River. And CWAG is reserving judgment till all the data is in, and including any financial benefits.
Ms. Orr.
Thank you, Gary. 4 years ago, I sat up here and said, in favor of the pipeline. Today, I'm so excited that we know that the city of Prescott, at full build-out, will not need to actually tap into the Big Chino because of the amount of water that we are using. And I think that's great information to have. What we've worked on for the last 4 years, actually more than that, are the testing with all the testing that's going on at the Big Chino. And we know that if we ever use that, if we ever tap and bring that pipeline, we're going to have to mitigate. And we will know exactly what mitigation needs to be done. So the town of Prescott Valley has 46% that they can use of the Big Chino. They're probably going to need that sooner than the city will. And if that becomes a point of negotiation.
That's the next question, actually.
Well, I'll jump in there on that.
Okay.
My point on that is that, so maybe that's a way that regionally that we can require some things to happen as far as greater conservation. If you want the pipeline, then you need to do a better job with conservation. My concern about the pump storage, and we're going to go ahead and address that too, is that initial fill. That's a lot of water to come out of the Big Chino at once, and what that might do to the upper river. So I'm hoping that they're really doing some good studies on that, and we'll be able to use that data.
Yeah, they are doing studies, and we'll get those this fall.
Right.
Mr. Sischka.
Yeah, Dr. Beverly, correct me if I'm wrong, but when I was talking to the pump storage people, they were talking about an initial fill of 26,000 acre-feet.
That's correct.
Okay.
Roughly correct.
Not 420 acre-feet, but 26,000 acre-feet.
Right.
And they were looking at 1,200 acre-feet as a yearly demand, so to speak.
Right. At this point, those are all approximate numbers. We'll find out the details this fall.
That's exactly right.
Right.
But I have nothing to add to what Billie said. I think that at build-out, which is according to the general plan, could be 85,000, and who knows when that would happen, because back in the 70s, they started Yavapai Hills, and Yavapai Hills still isn't built out. So who knows when that's going to happen. But it's like I said earlier, I really don't see Robin Peter, which is Robin, the Big Chino Water Ranch, water that goes into the Verde for filling up or making our AMA whole. So that really is hard for me to justify. But I don't see Prescott as ever using and ever needing the Big Chino Water Ranch.
Okay, next.
Thank you,
Let me
Steve.
have everyone respond before.
I just wanted to thank him for the fact check.
Okay, good. Mr. Lamerson.
Thank you, Mr. Beverly. Here again, negotiation is a critical issue. The fact of the matter is, Prescott is the only city in the Prescott AMA that has the right to import water. Nobody else does, including Prescott Valley. We agreed to share our water with Prescott Valley because we're a postage stamp. And the fact of the matter is, we didn't want all the growth in Prescott alone. But we don't have to go get the water necessarily for Prescott. If indeed we need to go get the water to help Prescott Valley is going to have to come to the table and do what we want done.
Right.
We're in control. We are the Prescott AMA. We are the only importers of assured water into the AMA from outside of the AMA, and nobody else can do that but the city of Prescott.
Mr. Mengarelli.
Yeah, thank you. So I love the river. I run the Colorado River and actually guide Diamond Down. If you're familiar with Diamond Down, I love doing that and have done it several times. So the importance of rivers, particularly in Arizona, very important to us, to all of us. I think, these are big issues. So I'm going to pull a page out of Jim Lamerson's playbook here. The state really has to help us with some of these issues. I haven't heard anything from the pump storage in a while. It concerns me about the amount that Steve mentioned, the 26,000 acre feet initially to get those reservoirs up and going. I think Mayor Pro Tem has touched on something really good here, and that is we could use the need that Prescott Valley has, a greater need likely for the Big Chino than we do. So when you talk about regional partnering, we could use that as a way to get them to the table and get them on board with more conservation measures and how they use water. So I think that's a brilliant idea. I think it's just more collaboration and regional partnering to get there because these are really big issues in the Big Chino. We have to wait for the modeling and the monitoring, which is coming here later this year. Is that what you're saying, Gary, that you're hoping the modeling and monitoring will be done?
From ITC, yes.
Yeah. Oh, from ITC.
Yeah.
But the Big Chino modeling and monitoring isn't until next year, if I'm understanding correctly, and so we got to wait to see what that looks like.
Right. Okay, well, these questions kind of overlap. Go ahead, Mr.
I
Lamb.
just wanted to share what the mayor was talking about with a navigable river.
Yeah.
You got to have the feds in the state at the table. That's the only navigable river in the state of Arizona.
Okay, the next question is, the council has implied Prescott will not need to import water from the Big Chino for several decades. However, Prescott Valley is expressing more immediate demands for the pipeline. How do you resolve the different needs of Prescott Valley and the city of Prescott? And you've already begun to address that. Do you want to add anything? Please go ahead.
I would like to talk about the cost of the pipeline because that will be expensive. And certainly if it's Prescott Valley that needs the pipeline and not Prescott, it would be the people that would be using the water in the pipeline that would need to pay for that pipeline, not the citizens of Prescott.
Ms. Rue Singh?
I would just like to say that Prescott has a controlling interest of 54% in the pipeline. So I haven't read the contract or anything, but I believe that means that we will have the final say in what happens to it. But I just hope that we continue to conserve water, especially regionally, and maybe we may not need the pipeline.
Mm-hmm. Please go ahead.
Thank you, and you're correct, 54-46, but we also have 100% say-so over the retired irrigation water rights, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
I think Prescott's committed to finishing what we said we're going to do with the modeling and the monitoring. I think we would even be willing to look at what an RFQ looks like for a public-private partnership. But when it comes to spending money, it's going to be tough, guys, for Prescott to do anything. Mayor Pro Tem and Steve Sischka led the front on Prop 443 to save us with PSPRS, and that's really been a focus for us right now. I think it's a great asset that we have the Big Chino rights, but we're a long way from ever, getting to the place where we would develop that pipeline. With that, I will say that we want to partner with Prescott Valley, so we're not going to just turn a blind eye to their needs, but it's going to have to be awfully innovative and creative to get that done because we're not going to be willing to spend any money at this point.
Any further comment? Okay, now comes the fun part. You've just been responding to questions that you got ahead of time, and you had a chance to think about it, I hope. I think you did. There's really high quality answers here from this council is my impression. But now we come to the wild card, the people. And so Pete Krupnick is handing me questions, so here we go. Proposed changes to the city's water policy will allow the city to provide water to developments outside the city limits. Are you in favor of this proposal? If so, How do you justify depleting the city's water reserves in this manner? Our most enthusiastic responder, go ahead.
I'm totally in favor of the new policy. You know, one of the ways ADWR says that we can reach safe yield is that if we sewer as much of the water users in the AMA as possible. This allows the city of Prescott to do that. If in fact you don't know about the new policy is allowing Prescott to sell water outside of city limits. What that does is in order to do that, a development outside of city limits would have to sewer, would have to go by our landscaping standards and our inside the house appliance standards. And I think that it would be an excellent situation for the AMA and for the city of Prescott.
Ms. Orr?
Thank you. I agree with Councilman Sischka. You know, it's one of the great things about having the actual real-time data about water is that we're able to look at these policy changes. If we can provide water, all wells would have to be shut off. No well would be allowed. And then they would have to be connected to the city sewer. So not only are we stopping that one more exempted well in our aquifer, we're regulating that, and we're able to recharge that water. So I think it's a great idea. But again, that infrastructure, the connection would have to be, the cost of that would have to be borne by the development.
Ms. Rue Singh?
I haven't had a chance to study this policy. It's still being drafted, but like they say, the devil's in the details. And as a fiscal conservative, my main concern would be what would be the cost to the taxpayers and who would be paying to run all the infrastructure of the water and sewer mains out to it's called the expansion zone. It's an area north of Pioneer Parkway, all the way to the Chino Valley city limits east of the airport. It is a huge tract of land, and I understand that collecting sewer effluent credits is important, and the effluent is important for our recharge in order to achieve safe yield. But my main concern is who are the main property owners out there and who would benefit the most. And I just want to make sure that it is a good deal for the taxpayers and for the community if we do this extension. Thank you.
Other comments? Mr. Lamerson.
In general, I oppose servicing water outside the city. But depends on what we get for servicing the water outside the city. Depends on what we can negotiate for that water outside the city. If it's taking people off of septic tanks and putting them on the sewer, if it's them paying for the infrastructure, if it's getting some really nice property that the city's been wanting, if it's getting property that's good for economic development opportunities to generate the sales taxes that are necessary in the city. We haven't come to the point of being able to say, here's what we're trading for yet.
Go ahead, Mr. Mengarelli, go ahead.
Well, so it's already been mentioned, but just to make sure everybody knows, the water policy is still a draft form. We haven't adopted anything just yet, so we're still working through that. Realize that we're already doing water outside the city in some cases. The town of Chino Valley, we have a lot of our water infrastructure up there, and we do serve homes and businesses in Chino Valley. There's a lot of unincorporated county around the edges of the city that we currently are serving. And so I think above all else, this is the environmentally right thing to do, because now you don't have exempt wells out there unregulated and you don't have septic systems. So I firmly believe from an environmental perspective, we have to do this in order to preserve the AMA. And it's a way that we can help regionally preserve our sustainable water source in the Little Chino Aquifer. I think density is something that's very important to look at when you look at this out in the county. Keep in mind, I mentioned Herb Dishlett did the study. we're not going to run out of water if we do city water out into the unincorporated parts of the county, because we've already had Herb Dishlip study that. We're allowed to pump 16,500. Herb said that if you do that, you're going to get to about 12,700 acre feet max. So we're not going to run out of water if we do this. All the infrastructure would be paid for by those that are building. You have to pay per acre foot for the water. You have to pay for the water meter, on and on and on. The list goes for what you're going to have to pay for if you do this. So it's a very good thing for the taxpayer in terms of the financial aspect of this, the way it's proposed right now. So it's a great negotiating tool, as Jim Lamerson mentioned. We could really use this to our advantage if you want some very majestic rocks.
Ms. Rue Singh first, and then Ms. Orr.
Oh, I just wanted to stress that with the new water policy, it would be very important to have like a road show and open houses and hearings and invite the public to attend and let them get information and have some public input as to this new policy, which will be affecting all of us. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, on that note, the city has had several different study sessions, and we have public comment every time. And so I do believe we're open for those kinds of conversations. That's why we do it, the study session. That's why we're having several study sessions on the water policy, because it is so important. And so I do think that we give the public plenty of opportunity to do that.
Ms. Orr, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to emphasize again that the cost of this would be absorbed by the developer. And I actually spoke with Michael Amar, our city manager, last night. I called him and said, what can we do to have more opportunity for input? And maybe that we do something regarding the new changes in the water policy and put it out there, maybe even away from council, more of an informal setting, like we do on a lot of things already. I'd just like to say that right now in the city, inside the city, we have 1,800 houses that are on septic. And that's something we need to fix as much as we can. I mean, these are actually feasible. Some of them we can't do because of the formations and where the developments are, but some we can. And so one of the policies that we're looking at is that to have them, ask them if they want to connect to the sewer, make it feasible. The cost would be about $3,200 a house. But then we would be, again, be able to use that water, recover it, recharge it, and it's good for them also, because then we don't have the problems with the leaky sewers, again, polluting our creeks and our lakes.
Mm-hmm. In talking with the public, they actually talked to me too. Some of the public concerns I've heard about this policy are that, well, first, why don't you just annex those areas? And the second concern is this an attempt to run around Prop 400? Mr. Sischka?
Can I say, when we were coming up with this policy, Prop 400 never even entered into the room. We never even considered, are we going to be able to, are we going to have to put this water that we get back into permanent recharge, or are we going to be able to get recharge credits? That didn't even enter into the conversation. What was the other question that you had?
Why not just annex those areas into the city?
This is great. The city gets all the benefits and none of the bad things. If it's not annexed, we don't have to build police stations and fill them with police officers. We don't have to build fire stations and fill them with, firemen. We get the best for the absolute least in this situation. City of Prescott comes out smelling like a rose, and all of our citizens do also.
Other replies? Ms. Rusing?
I think that's an interesting point about Prop 400, which deals with running city services, water and sewer, to annexation. So if you don't have an annexation, then it pretty much, according to me, would nullify Prop 400. And also, Mr. Lamerson mentioned sales taxes, but if it's in the county, and any commercial that goes out there will be providing city water and sewer. And if a commercial development's out there, businesses, I believe would the county get the sales tax, or would the city get the sales tax? Please clarify.
Mr. Lamerson?
No, you negotiate the best deal. The best deal would be to have the commercial inside the city limits.
Ms. Orr, did you want to comment?
Yes, I do. On the annexation, Councilman Sischka is right. If you're in the unincorporated area, you're on CAFMA, Central Arizona Fire Medical Authority, and the cost there for us to take that over would be expensive for the city. So if it's not annexed, we don't have to provide fire or police or the streets. So those things are expensive. So I just think the best of the world said, if we could provide water and recharge and recover and recharge that water, it's a great thing for the city.
Yeah, I would agree with those two comments from Councilman Sischka and Mayor Pro Tem. You have to remember PSPRS is right there. When you start filling fire stations and police stations in those annexed areas, then you're taking on all the pension fund again. And we've already seen what that did to our city. So this is a way to help maintain the AMA with our water system and sewer, which then gets recharged, and not have to take care of all the public service in that case. So I think, it could be a really smart way to go. And I think with commercial, we do our very best to make sure that's in the city of Prescott. We may not get all of it, but as much as we can, that's where the sales tax is generated.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Rue Singh, go ahead.
Oh, I'd like to go back to public input. I've been attending all the city council meetings and study sessions as part of my homework for my campaign. And at the water study sessions, there's like the same three people that make comments. So when I mention public input, like every time we improve a street, like say redo Park Avenue or Beach or Summit, the city does make an effort to rent an auditorium or a school or something to invite the public. And that was the kind of hearing or public input I was talking about. This sounds like a big game changer, and I think that the public needs to really be aware of it and have some input in order for it to get our public support behind it. Thank you.
Okay, any additional comments, or have we exhausted this? No, he's got one more. Mr. Sischka, go ahead.
I think this is really important. And the question I want to ask you is this. If, and I say if, that means the water policy has to change. We have to vote on that. And if things are going with the developer as they are going, if in fact you could have everything you dreamed for in the Dells, because we're able to offer water outside of the city, would you take it? That's the big question.
Interesting question. We will ponder that, all of us, I'm sure. These things are complicated. There's always trade-offs, difficult trade-offs. So, okay, you ready for another wild card question from the audience? Stand back, here it comes. Have you accepted any money from businesses, especially developers or builders, or from large landowners? If so, how can you represent ordinary Prescott citizens instead of your donors? There's a zinger for you. Who wants to take it?
I'll take it.
Ms. Orr.
Yes, I am very proud of the campaign that we've been running. I've had about 150 donors. I'm proud of that. It's been a very transparent campaign. I have $68 that was put in a glass. Steve and I had an event together when we kicked off our campaign, and we split. People put money in a glass jar, and I think we split it $68. Every dollar I've received has a name by it, and I think that's important. And that's about transparency, and I'm proud of the campaign that we're running.
Okay, did you really answer the question?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I guess I assumed everybody read the newspaper today. Yes, I have taken money from developers. I've taken money from 150 folks, and they're from all walks of life. And again, some of them have been small. My door's open to anyone. I will just tell you one quick story. I invited someone to come to a fundraiser, and he said, Billie, I can't come because I know the kind of donations you're going to want. I said, I don't want any donation. I want you to come. I want you to be there. And he did come, and he had a great time. So,
Mr. Sischka.
You haven't heard from me before this afternoon, so I got to say something.
Well, yeah, don't forget to answer the question.
No, I won't. Yes, I have. And a lot of these people that I've taken donations from, not only business owners and some developers, but also normal, average, everyday people who dump $5 into the bag. I have to tell you that this is not maybe somewhere where you came from, where it's pay to play. Here, I haven't gotten any developer to say to me, well, I'll give you this if you give me this. And one of the things that I said at the very beginning was, yeah, I'll take money from developers who I'm not making decisions, big decisions on right now. But I didn't take any money from Jason Giese of AED. Wouldn't take any money of Jason Giese of AED. Didn't take any money from Brad and Margot Christensen, who we're going to be making a decision about with a hotel downtown. So I think that what you have to do is sit back and evaluate each of us and say how good and how much of a person are they really, rather than who gave them money.
Okay, next response, Mr. Lamerson.
Thank you. I've lived in Prescott for 40 years. I know a lot of ranchers. I know a lot of developers. I know a lot of business people, and they're my friends. Yes, I have people that have donated to my campaign.
Next, Ms. Rue Singh, go ahead.
Thank you. I decided early on in my campaign that I was not going to take money from our developers and builders because I believe that it is my fiduciary duty as an elected official to put the best interests of the voters and the taxpayers and the people that elected me first. Because every council session on the agenda are items that affect these developers, and if you're going to be elected for a 4-year term, chances are that it's going to affect somebody that donated to your campaign. So in order to maintain a clear conscience, to be unbiased and uncompromised, and according to my values, I did not take developer money. Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Well, this is all public record anyway, but good question. Kind of unfair this time for me. I'm running unopposed, so I'm not really raising money. Have I received money from developers on my initial campaign? The answer is yes. What I will tell you is it's easy for people to perceive or think the worst of us sitting up here on the council, that we take money from people and then there's some sort of backdoor deal. It's just absolutely not true. It's absolutely baseless. We do not operate that way. The fact of the matter is these people that we're receiving money from, you're receiving it from the major industry that we have here in town. If that's a developer or a builder or whatever that is, those are the folks that are stepping up and helping out. Furthermore, these are the people that are always at the fundraisers writing checks. They're the ones that make things happen in this city. They're the ones that support the nonprofits. And I'm proud of these people because they get stuff done in our city that we all benefit from. There's no handshake deals on this money that comes from a developer. It just doesn't happen.
Okay, any other comment? Proceed to the next zinger from the electorate. Proposed changes to the city's water policy will greatly diminish the effectiveness of the Water Issues Subcommittee's role in the responsible allocation of water to new development. Are you in favor of this proposal? If so, how do you justify eliminating the opportunity for public comment and input during the water allocation process?
I beat Steve this time.
Maybe I should just explain to the audience that the Water Issues Committee is a subcommittee of the council, and it has met Tuesday mornings monthly, and members of it are Mr. Lamerson and Mr. Sischka. So that's what that is. Please go ahead with an answer.
Yeah, no, I beat Steve.
No, oh, go ahead.
So the water policy we have now in many ways is not functioning very well. There have been situations where we budget a certain amount for commercial and a certain amount for residential for the year. If you didn't get to the city by April or May, too bad, you're going to have to wait the next year. That's just not a good way to do business. We all know the market fluctuates. There's certain times where you're going to see a lot more happening. There's downturns that we saw back in 07, 08. So I think this is really smart to get a better policy in place that allows the development to move forward on these smaller developments. You're talking like the subcommittee would be meeting about 1 or 2 acre feet being parceled out. And I just don't think that that's the right way to govern and get stuff done. On the bigger stuff, of course, it's going to come to the council. And the subcommittee is going to make a recommendation. But I think there's got to be some way that some of these smaller developments where you're talking about less than 5 acre feet or something in that range get done without all the extra red tape.
Mr. Sischka.
I think it's time for the Water Policy Committee, Water Policy, I guess not Water Policy Committee, but Water Issues Committee, to change its course. I think that it's time that we started looking at real water issues rather than do we give this guy water or do we give that guy water. I'll be honest with you, I've been on that committee for 4 years and I've never seen anybody turned down for water. So what does that say? It says, hey, we found water somewhere in every instance. Not that we didn't have the water, we've got a lot of water. But I go back to 1998. Where all of a sudden there was a rush. We had been declared water mining and the state said, okay, anybody who gets their preliminary plat in by such and such a date in 98, you can have water. So what was there? There was a huge rush by all sorts of people to get water and reserve water. Well, what happened was if they didn't develop, they kept coming back to us saying, hey, would you extend our water? Would you extend our water? Would you extend our water? That was a ridiculous system. So we need to take into account what we're talking about today. The Water Issues Committee ought to have more substantive issues to deal with than just who gets water.
Other responses? Please go ahead.
I like the policy we got. It served this city well. This city's in a great position with regards to water today because of the policies we've been working. Now, are policies subject to change because there's new nuances and things that are different? Sure. Am I open to changing policy? Sure. But I'm not going to bash the policy that has led this city to the best water management in the state of Arizona. Conservation, that stuff went through water policy too. There's a lot of things that have been done, Steve, before you got there, and since you've got there, that maybe while you don't think we're doing anything, we are.
Other comments? Mrs. Orr?
Yes, I agree with Mayor Mengarelli about the bureaucracy side of this. And, you know, we've tried to reduce some of the bureaucracy in the city when it comes to community development, permitting, and so I believe that we don't have to go. I think there's a limit. We can do a standard, maybe under 5 acre feet or something. That, but to have to go every time to the Water Issues Committee for everything just seems like that we can. Go ahead, Jim.
Billie, we had that, and it was 3 acre feet.
Okay.
And it was administratively approved. McConnell removed that. You got to remember, we had a lot of things there prior to other city management.
So, well, now we have new city management, and we can make this work a little better, I think. That's all I'm saying, less bureaucracy.
Go ahead.
If you haven't noticed, Councilman Lamerson and I have a disagreement about this. But you know, I tell you what, Jim's been the chairman of this committee for a long time, and so he's seen a lot more than I have. But I have to tell you that I think that it's time for the Water Issues Committee to move along and try and maybe establish regional cooperation, talk about how we really want to work our water in the future rather than just dealing with who gets water, who doesn't.
And I agree with Councilman Sischka, it's time for a shift. I never said I was against that. What I'm against is bashing what's led this community to the best water managed city in the state of Arizona.
Good. You know, this dialogue is really interesting and helpful. So, is there any more? You ready to move on? Okay.
We're interesting people.
I can tell. And you have interesting meetings and conferences, I can tell. Please go ahead.
I would just like to say I'm always for more openness and truth and transparency in all of our committees and subcommittees and city dealings. It's the best thing to do for the public and our community. Thank you.
Okay, so zinger number 3, ready? With all the new apartments in town, will the city of Prescott eventually have to ration water?
No.
You can only take 2 minutes.
We're allowed to pump 16,500 acre feet. Last year we pumped 6,700 acre feet.
Go ahead.
Apartments don't do landscaping. So we get all the water back that goes through that system. If there's a few plants outside of the buildings, then it's just a tawdry amount. But we get back through the sewer every bit of the water that goes into those apartment buildings. And no, we're not going to run out of water.
Okay, Mrs. Orr.
Yes, I agree with the mayor, no, and Councilman Sischka. The other thing I would like to say is one of the goals in our plan that the voters voted on was affordable living. People have a hard time finding a place to live in the city of Prescott because it's so expensive. Our housing is expensive. So apartments are allowing us to give folks homes that can't afford to build a house in Prescott Lakes or Southview, but yet they can live in Prescott and work in Prescott because of some of the apartments. And I hope we're able to do more with affordable living down the road.
Other comments? Mr. Lamerson.
Thank you. No. We're not going to have to. We already ration water, so to speak. We put an allocation on there. So no. And I agree with Mayor Pro Tem. You know, there's a reason why we're trying to come in here with a more affordable opportunity, wage scale type housing in this town. And we're working on that.
Okay, great. Ready to move on? All right. Let's see. So the card says 100% water provided minus 50% recharge collected from the sewers equals 50% water loss. This is not water conservation. And there's no question here, but can you comment on that somehow? I think what they're getting at is that more water could be recovered in the sewers and in the recharge process. The main loss in wastewater recovery is there's probably a very small loss from leakage in the pipes that's minor. But most of it is just landscape water use that evaporates and is not returned to the sewer system. And so the 50% number in this question is probably incorrect. I think Dishlip's number was 25%. My number was 30%. I've been saying that for a couple years. So someplace in that range, how could that be improved? Let me just add a question on.
Well, I think we've done a good job with our recharge facility, if you're familiar with it. I think, Gary, you're right. It's like 60 to 70% that can be recovered. The other piece that you didn't mention is at the recharge facility, when that's in the pond sitting there waiting for it to go down into the aquifer, you do have some evaporation. So I think our system is really good. It's been improved a lot over the last 5 to 10 years, and we're fortunate that we can recharge, 60-some%.
Thank you, Gary. The other thing we do a great job monitoring our water lines. We know exactly when there's a leak, and we can get on top of that as soon as possible. We have less than 6% leakage in our water system.
which is below average for municipal water systems in the state. I'll say that too. Yeah.
And we used to have 15% before we really hopped on it. That's why when we redo all these roads around town, we get down into the earth and replace all the infrastructure just so this doesn't happen. I think that Prescott is remarkably efficient when it comes to water and our infrastructure, and that speaks for itself.
Ms. Rue Singh?
I just wanted to add that the city is encouraging more rainwater harvesting, both the closed system and then the open system where it goes into detention basins, because it's most of our water that's wasted supposedly is on using our drinking water to irrigate our outside landscape. So if we can avoid using our drinking water on the outside landscape, that helps, and that might explain maybe some of the difference between what goes in and what comes out. Thank you.
Right. Mr. Lamerson?
Thank you. Yeah, one time we had a lot more leakage, and we replaced all the meters. And the reason we replaced all the meters, it saved us 700 acre-feet of water a year. That's how much we were losing out of the meters. And I think you were part of that, if I remember correctly, or CWAG was, when we identified that was a problem. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, we have to just be diligent on watching how some of this stuff goes. And we've spent a lot of money as a community to make sure that we have some of the best facilities and spent a lot of money, and we continue to do that. And that's one of the ways that you can mitigate, so to speak, your waste of water. With regards to, you're not going to control all the evaporation, you're not going to control all of the leakage, but you can sure control the stuff that's really bad. And we know who's using lots of water. We know who's using the big numbers. And that's one of the reasons why we tiered the weight structures, is to try and cut that down.
Right. Other comments? Okay. So here's a optimistic start to this question. It says, thank you for your service. What is your personal plan for sustainable development? What is your specific economic plan that is green, and where can I read or learn about your personal plan? So by personal plan, I think we could extend that to your influence on city policy. You could take both personal and city policy in that question. So it's what is your plan for sustainable development? What's your economic plan that is green, and where can we find out about it? Mr. Sischka?
I really think that we need to quantify how much we're each individually using. You know, it gets down to what we personally use and the personal responsibility that we take in order to make this area green. You know, you talk about growth. I'll tell you what, like I said, in those areas that I saw, that new houses, there wasn't much, if any, outdoor watering. So everything was going through the sewer system. That's what we want. We want everything to go through the sewer system and as little as possible to be watered outside. So that being said, the city can encourage you as much as possible to get rid of your lawns, to get rid of your swimming pools. You're supposed to laugh at that one, everybody. And be good citizens, and that is my personal how are we going to get there moment.
Okay, any other responses to this? Let's make these speed answers. Quickies. Mr. Lamerson, go ahead.
Okay, I didn't move to Arizona to live in Florida. I moved here because it was brown. And I kind of like the desert environment. I kind of like rattlesnakes and horned toads and scorpions. So I believe if you want something green, put in AstroTurf and use pooper scoopers.
I think
I think we have to give that credit for being the most wry, humorous answer of the morning.
I was hoping for that last.
Ms. Rusing.
Well, I just think that as if you're going to be a public elected official, you need to walk the walk and talk the talk and set a good example. And one thing I've started doing, I have a rain gauge now that was given to me as a part of the Citizens Academy. And I've been measuring, and last night we got half an inch during the big thunderstorm. So it's made me more aware of my water use personally, and because I believe that if we're going to be making water policy and encouraging conservation, we need to set a good example ourselves.
Okay, great. Ms. Orr, do you want to answer?
Sure, absolutely. You know, for me, it's really about being truthful, being honest, being transparent. When we are sitting on that council, we make decisions based on what's best for all of the city of Prescott. And so it's not so much personal, it's more of always doing the right thing. I just read a quote the other day, and it was by, it was Eisenhower, that said, it's easy to know what the right thing to do is. The hard part is doing it. And so as a council, I will tell you, I believe that we are doing the right thing for the city of Prescott with regard to our water. And lots of other areas too, but definitely water.
Okay, and finally, Mr. Mengarelli.
Well, I think, with 9 children, I make sure I put a timer on their showers, so that's pretty important. But I'm motivated by the dollar, and when you saw that graph Gary had up there with our water rates and having as many people as I do in my home, it hits my pocketbook pretty hard. And so my wife and I are very conscious of water usage around our home. We have solar panels on our house, and so we try to do the best we can personally.
Okay, so that's all the time we have for audience questions. The last 5 minutes is for closing statements. Let's start with Mrs. Orr and just go down the line. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So I have some material in the back that will tell you about my background. Hope you pick it up. There's a rack card, and there also is a magazine where I wrote an article about what the city has done in open space. I hope you pick it up and take a look at it. I am committed to do what is best for this city, always. I said that the day that I took my oath of office. I will always look through the lens of what is best for the city of Prescott. I hope you will take one of your 3 votes and mark Billie Orr. And I appreciate you being here today. My door's always open. My cell phone is out there everywhere. And so I look forward again when we started the session today. Collaboration, leadership. I'm here to help you. I would love to see us do more regionally. And I'm excited that we're going to have a leadership summit about water. Thank you.
Well, thanks again, Gary and CWAG. Great opportunity to be here. And thanks for coming out. Thanks for caring about your city and being here for these couple hours to listen to us and to ask questions. I think it's very important in terms of your civic duty to be engaged and understand what's going on in your city. It's been a real privilege and honor to be your mayor, and I love our city. The city has given myself and my family so much that I sincerely want to give back and do the very best I can for Prescott to move us forward, to preserve what we love and enhance the rest. I'm Greg Mengarelli, and I'd appreciate your vote.
I have lived in the state of Arizona since 1965, and I understand that water is more precious than gold in our state. We all need to adapt to the new reality of an Arizona that is drier and warmer. Water conservation, cooperation, and regional planning is an issue that involves all of the AMA. If elected, I look forward to working with our city council, city staff, CWAG, stakeholders, the community, and others to come up with common sense solutions. Let's be proactive. And I support sustainable growth. We can grow reasonably and carefully if we plan for the future. We are at a crossroads. It's up to you, the people of Prescott, to choose which road you want to take. And it can begin now with this election. And I want to thank CWAG for all the hard work they have done, and they need to have more public officials on their membership.
Thank you, CWAG, for sponsoring this, and thank you, the public who showed up. I truly do love this city. This city has been very good to me and my family. I've truly enjoyed serving the citizens of Prescott. I would enjoy serving the citizens of Prescott in the future, and again this election. If you choose to vote for me, I will promise you I will do the very best job I can. Thank you very much, and I ask for your vote.
Yeah, thank you, CWAG. This has been fun. With me, I'm Steve Sischka. What you see is what you get. This was never, ever on my bucket list. I did this because I truly love Prescott. Getting up at 3 in the morning was never on my bucket list either, but I've been doing a lot of that lately, just thinking about the things that we've talked about today. For me, good enough just isn't. And that kind of haunts you sometime. So the kind of government you get with me is fair and reasonable. I'm a bottom line kind of guy, and I look at things from a common sense standpoint. So please vote for me, Steve Sischka, and also get a hold of me at effectiveprescottleadership.com.
Great. So this concludes the forum. And thank you all for coming and sharing these viewpoints with us. Good, great job. Thank you.